What's up, guys? Today we're going to do just kind of a special discussion topic video because there's been some news floating around. Originally, this was just going to be a reaction to some of Alden Ehrenreich's quotes in a recent, I believe he was on a podcast where he said he'd be willing to come back as Han Solo, and something about like Lucasfilm is currently looking at what Star Wars looks like right now. They're trying to decide on how it's going to move forward, and he mentioned streaming services, so we wanted to talk about all that. And then a couple days ago, we were on Kessel Run Transmissions with Noah Outlaw and Corey Van Dyke, and they just like dropped the bomb on us that they're looking at having Donald Glover back as well, which was a huge surprise to me. So we were just like talking and throwing around ideas of what would we want from a Solo continuation story, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So I guess let's start first with just the idea of Alden coming back as Han for maybe a Solo sequel or some type of series that continues the story that Solo left off on.
I do think that the most likely scenario is a Disney Plus series. I think Lucasfilm knows about like the hashtag campaign started by our friends at Star Wars Newsnet, Resistance Broadcast, and the Make Solo 2 Happen thing. Chose this shirt for a reason. I think they know that people want to see that. And I think that given the I guess I'm trying to say financial situation of the movie, which is like it just didn't do as well at the box office as they wanted, but it's because they had to shoot it twice. I don't know. Disney Plus seems like a safer area for them to go.
Yeah.
Especially with the volume. Like,
yeah.
You don't have to build any sets.
Yeah.
You build some, but you can just make whatever you want in the volume.
Right. And I think they left the end of Solo, the movie, they left some ties untied, or
loose ends.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. They left some loose ends for potentially continuing on the story, such as Kira going to Dathomir to meet up with Maul, or we could see Han and Chewie go to Tatooine. And I was saying that I thought it would be really cool if we were to see the very first meeting of Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt. Yeah,
well, when you look at stuff that was said by John Kasdan, their original plan, had the movie been a hit, was to build towards like this crime syndicate war, which sounds great. I think he tweeted out like the icons of the Hutt Cartel, Crimson Dawn, and Black Sun. I can't remember what the third one was, but or maybe it was the Pikes. But the idea was that they were going to build towards like this big kind of criminal fight, which is a pretty cool idea. I would really like to see that continue to play out.
Yeah, I've said that for years now, that I want like a crime syndicate kind of underworld type show. And specifically a show, I would prefer this to be a Disney Plus series, kind of like Mandalorian, versus movies.
I agree. I think that the movies are best served handling like the big galactic events. Mm-hmm. The next movies could be the Old Republic, and we get to see what the Jedi and the Sith were fighting about back then, but it would look different because there's a ton of Sith instead of just two. Like, that feels like a big old galactic moment in history. Telling Han Solo's story feels to me like a Legends book or a canon book where it's just like Phasma or Thrawn or Tarkin. Mm-hmm. When we're focusing on just a character, I'm like, yeah, let's make that a series. Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
And then on the flip side, if we're talking about Lando getting his own series, we could be looking at something more like, Alden Ehrenreich might reprise his role as Han Solo in a Lando series.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. Like, in an ideal world for me, it would just be a continuation of the story that was set up in Solo, which I have no idea if Lando would have been involved in that or not. Like, if I could only follow one thread from Solo, it would be Kira and Maul.
Yeah.
But I would prefer we just get the whole gang back together and continue on.
Yeah. But okay, so possibilities for Lando series. What would you want to see from that?
Well, I think the Calrissian Chronicles is a perfect setup. I don't know if I want it to be a prequel, though. I mean, he can just be... The Calrissian Chronicles can continue on. And it would be kind of fun to see him, like, maybe narrating these stories and saying, like, here's how it went down, but then we're seeing that it did not go down that way. Mm-hmm. It was, like, it would be fun to have that unreliable narrator playfulness.
Yeah. I saw someone on Twitter, a couple people on Twitter saying that this could be narrated by Billy Dee Williams and he could be in it, but like telling this story, and then most of the actual show is young Lando.
That would actually be a lot of fun. I like that idea a lot.
Because that would be honoring Billy Dee Williams and his role as Lando, but at the same time, I don't think he would be down for doing an entire show as Lando. So having both of them involved in the same series would be really interesting.
I do think that's a very fun connection, and just a way to, anytime you can make the universe feel as one, it feels great to tie the original actor and the new actor together.
Yeah, and I also really want to see L3 again. I loved L3 and her character, and it would be really cool to see like how she, I don't know, how she built herself, and then how she first met with Lando.
So
and
yeah,
some of
that would be prequel territory.
Yeah, but if it's like what I said, like if it's Billy Dee telling a story, he could tell prequel stories and stories from post Solo time.
That is true. Like each episode could just be a new random adventure. And I think I mentioned this on the Kessel Run appearance we had. The same could be said for Han Solo. Like, and I'm pulling in something that Joseph Scrimshaw said on Force Center podcast, where Han Solo has the line in A New Hope that, kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff. Like, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, while my preference would be to just continue with all the characters moving in the same direction, going towards that cartel fight, I do think this has a lot of flexibility where we could have just one series about Han and Chewie and Jabba. There could be a series about Lando. There could be a series about Kira and Maul, and maybe they intersect with each other.
Yeah.
That seems overly complicated, but I do feel like there's this flexibility.
When we were on Kessel Run, we started to talk about all the little, like the neat little hints that were dropped in Solo that we could potentially see in a Lando series, like that business on Felucia, or, you know, I don't know if this would have anything to do with Lando, but Aura Singh and Beckett.
Well, Lando was glad that Becca killed Aura Singh because he owed her money.
Right.
So like, we could see that interaction.
Yeah, we could find out why Lando was glad that he took care of her.
There are two old Legends adventures that he mentions in the movie that, like, they could adapt those. I guess I think it's a little more interesting to me to continue his story beyond Solo, because now it's like he doesn't have the Falcon. Like, what does he do?
Does he keep running into Han?
Right. Okay, there is that. This was an issue that happened in Legends that I just think is funny, really, but I don't want it to be repeated here. So the first time we meet Lando is in The Empire Strikes Back, and he's mad at Han. The last time they met, Han did something, and Han was hopeful that Lando had forgotten about it. And so then every story that a writer got with Han and Lando, it was like, well, this might be the last time they ever run into each other. So like in the A.C. Crispin Han Solo trilogy, at the end of it, Han screws over Lando. But then there's like a comic where they're back up and like Lando gets over it. And then at the end of it, Han screws Lando over. And then even as late as like 2012, I can't remember when Scoundrels came out by Timothy Zahn, but it's like a big heist movie or heist story. Han and Lando working together, and Lando's like, you better not do it this time, and then he screws him over. It's like, Lando, stop trusting him. So I don't want them to fall into that trap where it's like every time they see each other, Han does something worse and worse and worse to Lando.
And it's like, I mean, they left off the end of Solo well enough to then connect it to the way Lando reacts to Han, because you could say that the last time they saw each other was when Han won the Falcon and prevented Lando from cheating, you know.
Yeah, that works either way.
Because they bring up the Falcon and Han goes, I want her fair and square.
Like, it works enough where you're like, okay, that could be it. I do think that there's room for them to do it like one more time. If they met up again, or I mean, they can meet up and work together fine, and that's okay. I just don't want it to be like every single time Han does something terrible to Lando and Lando's still like, okay, one more time I'll trust you. Or it could just be a great running joke. Who knows? It might be written well enough.
Yeah.
The only other, I guess, hesitation I have about this news, and I should point out, like, we haven't really said this, but I trust Noah and Corey, but this is not official by any means. So, you know, take it all with a grain of salt until Lucasfilm says something. But I'm a little worried that it's like they are just basing this project over the character before having a story. I'm hopeful that's not the case, but I don't want that to be like a habit that they fall into where they're like, we'll figure out the story later.
Yeah.
I'd rather them come and say like, ooh, we have a really great idea for a Lando story. Get Donald Glover instead of the other way around.
Yeah. And I also have high hopes that if this is true, that Donald Glover has some production involvement and writing.
I mean, Atlanta's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, get him in the writing room, too.
Right. And that could be another big reason why they wanted to bring him back on for a series, because he's just good at everything he does.
And like, I think that they probably do have a story. I don't think Donald Glover would be interested unless he thought it were a good story worth telling. Same with like Kenobi. Like, I wouldn't want them to just be like, we have to do a Kenobi series because Ewan McGregor. And they're like, what's the story? I don't know. I don't care. Like, just get Ewan and we'll figure it out later. Like, I just don't like that way of working. But the fact that Ewan is on board and has said that he thought the script was great. Like, if Donald Glover is coming back, I don't think he would do it unless he also thought there was a good story to tell.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's everything I had to say.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like, all of this is speculation. It's kind of a slow Star Wars news time right now, but who knows? By the time we put this video out, everything could be confirmed and we could know the next movie.
Yeah, it's like we're just waiting for Celebration time to come, and hopefully they, I don't know, I'd love for them to announce something where they're like, hey, expect news on these days. And like, I'd like to still have that kind of Celebration air of excitement, even if we're all doing CouchCon.
Yeah, but until then, you know, might have a few videos like this pop up where we just talk about some potential news.
Yeah. But for now, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.